Hi there, fight fans. Welcome back to Calf Kick Sports. My name is Kian Lang, and today I'm going to be giving you my UFC 319 main card predictions and a breakdown of the card as a whole. Now, of course, if you follow the channel and if you saw last time out, I did a preview of UFC Abu Dhabi. We did okay. We went 1 of 7 on the prelims, 5 of 5 on the main card, and following that, I think it's only right that we stick to what I'm clearly good at. The prelims didn't work out so well, so we're going to focus on the main card today, and we're going to kick the action off with the opener. The number 11th ranked flyweight Tim Elliot taking on Kai Asakura. Now, this is a fight that I absolutely love, and I've got to tell you, I love this main card as a whole from start to finish. I think these are really technical matchups and really exciting fights to watch as a fan of the sport and as a fan of mixed martial arts and seeing the sport in its purest form. And I think these fights do that. You know, this opener, we got Tim Elliot, 9-11 in the UFC, ton of experience now at 38 years of age. And I think the biggest thing to note here for Tim is that 20-month layoff. We haven't seen him since 2023 where he took on and beat Sumadaji with a slick arm triangle. And, you know, Tim Elliot, he's sort of been one of these guys he's been a staple of the division, but he's struggled to really string wins together and gain momentum towards a title shot. And I think, you know, with a record of 9-11, and even you look at the last 2 fights, a loss to Mikhaev by arm triangle, and then he turns it around in the very next fight and wins by arm triangle. You know, he's a guy with 7 wins by submission, 6 losses by submission. So it's very difficult to predict which Tim Elliot we're going to see inside the cage. And thankfully, I've got the job of trying to do it. So lucky me, eh? And, you know, you look on the other side of the cage, we've got Kai Asakura here, who came into the UFC with a lot of hype, coming over from Rising, you know, big fights against the likes of Horiguchi over there, Manel Kape over there. So a lot of hype around this guy and enough hype to see him earn a title shot in his debut. And he suffered a similar fate to many. Going up against Alexandre Pantoja, he looked good in the first round. He showed some real good signs, you know, with the takedown defense. I think it impressed a lot of people, myself included. I didn't know if he'd be able to defend any takedown from Pantoja, to be honest. But, you know, he also mixed that in with the typical flying knees and the wild strikes and wild attacks that we're so used to seeing from Asakura at this point. But ultimately, like so many before him and so many since him, he came unstuck. You know, in the second round, Pantoja was able to take him down, lock in that submission, and really made quite easy work of him once it struck the mat. And I think that's going to be the real area of, you know, are we going to see an improvement or are we going to see something similar? Because there's no doubt that if this fight stays standing, Asakura is the favorite. You know, I'd expect him to maybe land the big knee up the middle when Elliot shoots in and end this fight pretty early here. But if Elliot can drag this fight down to the ground, like I said, he's got 7 wins via submission. He can do something here. He can finish this fight and he can get a big statement upset win, because I expect Asakura to be the favorite heading into this one. But, you know, for Elliot, any naked shots, any takedowns without setup, like I said, that knee up the middle of Asakura is one of his most dangerous weapons. So for Elliot, you really need to mind your P's and Q's with a takedown. You have to set them up. You have to fake takedowns early. You have to fake the shots. You have to put something in Asakura's face at all time. Keep the pressure on him, force him up against the cage, and see what you can do from there. For me, looking at prediction, I'm going to go with Kai Asakura. I think the power, I think he's so dynamic on the feet. He's powerful. He's quick. He's explosive. And I think all those things combined just might be too much for the veteran Elliot. So that's the opener of the card. I think it's a great fight. You know, the cardio also may favor Elliot, but ultimately I see Asakura coming out with the victory. Moving on into the next one, another clash that features 2 veterans this time, the 41-year-old Jared Cannonier, which may just be the perfect age for MMA, having watched Muslim Salikov look as good as he's ever looked on Abu Dhabi this past weekend. So, you know, maybe 41 is the golden age of MMA now, but nevertheless, the 7th ranked Jared Cannonier taking on the dynamic, the explosive, the entertainer inside and outside the cage, Mr. Michael Venom Page, MVP. Now, this is just such an intriguing clash. We saw Jared Cannonier bounce back in his last fight, facing off against RoboCop, a man who just had one of the most devastating knockouts of the year at UFC 317 over Jack Hermansson. And he almost did the very same to Jared Cannonier. He knocked him down early. He had him in a world of trouble. But as he's always done, the killer gorilla will not be put down easy. This man came back. He showed incredible heart, incredible hunger, and he showed that he still wants to make wave in this sport, in this organization, and he wants another run at this title. he fought back and he eventually finished the fight in the fourth round. And it was a big shock to many, myself included. I had RoboCop going into that fight, and, my predictions can be up and down, as we saw in Abu Dhabi. But, before that, we'd seen Imavov and Bahayo really control Cannonier and make easy work of him. Granted, the Bahayo fight was back and forth for large parts of it, but in the fifth round, we saw the Brazilian takeover almost finish Cannonier and leave him in a world of trouble by the time the fight was done. And, on the other side of the cage here for Cannonier, I think it's a matchup that doesn't suit him the best. In the past, when we've seen these dynamic, technical, skilled, patient strikers, Cannonier is found himself waiting almost too long to go, and waiting for that perfect shot. And it's a shot that's never arrived. You look at the Robert Whittaker fight. Granted, Cannonier broke his arm early in that fight due to a head kick thrown by Whittaker. But from then on, it was a really lackluster, really almost too patient performance by Cannonier. You kind of find yourself sitting in front of the TV, wishing and hoping and urging him to really attack and be the aggressor and force the issue, and it never really happened for him. And, in the biggest fight of his career against Israel Adesanya for the middleweight belt, it was a very similar story. In the end, it kind of looked like a sparring match, no disrespect intended, but Cannonier, again, just waited and waited and waited. And with Michael Venom Page, if you do that, you'll get beat 30-27. There's no two ways about it. MVP is perfectly happy sitting on the outside for 15 minutes and picking you off with leg kicks, with jabs, with strikes to the body, with that big step-in right hand that he throws, almost jumping right hand at times. So Cannonier has to be the aggressor here. He has to force the issue, he has to stay on the front foot, and he has to push MVP backwards for all 15 minutes of this fight. Now, that's enough about Cannonier. Let's look at Michael Venom Page, a guy who had so much hype coming into the UFC. I mean, this guy, the amount of talking he does, he's always going to garner that hype, that attention, that media attention. And there was a lot of pressure on MVP coming into this organization, coming over from Bellator. We've seen the likes of Pitbull not set the world alight. Patchy Mix struggled, Chandler struggled. So there was a lot of pressure on MVP. And, he took a tough loss to Gary, but the big wins over Kevin Holland and most recently over Shara Bullet Magomedov, I mean, he looked superb in that fight. The speed, despite being 38 years of age, MVP has never lost that speed. And it's that speed that catches guys off guard. You can see guys, they think they've kind of got a read on MVP, and then bang, a big right hand just shoots in at them. And, that bouncy, awkward karate style, he switches stances. He's never stagnant. He's never still. It's so hard for guys to track him down and to trap him in a corner. I think when you look at all these reasons put together, I have to go MVP in this one. I think he's going to use all those tools, use all that awkwardness, and kind of confuse Cannonier on the way to a decision victory. And looking ahead past that one, we've got one of my favourite fights on the card, a welterweight clash taking place between the number 10th ranked Geoff Neal and the number 12th ranked Carlos Prates. This fight originally booked for UFC 314 back in April. Of course, Neal pulled out. Prates went on to fight Gary, lost a tough decision. I think we saw Prates sort of be too mindful of his gas tank, maybe too scared to gas out in that fight, and we didn't really see him come on and look like himself in the cage until the fourth or fifth round. Now, granted, Gary sort of stagnated him superbly. He pushed him back. He threw head kick after head kick after head kick to sort of keep that left-handed Prates back at home, defending those head kicks. And I think that's something that Geoff Neal will look at and look to do and look to implement in this fight, because that left hand of Prates is like TNT back there. If you let it get off, it will blow up that chin of yours. And for a guy like Geoff Neal, he's taken a lot of damage recently in his career. You look at that Shavkat fight, that was an absolute war, which ultimately he was on the losing side of, but he took a lot of damage. And for the time being, his chin is held up. But if a guy like Carlos Prates catches you at the age of 34 with 6 losses on your record, that chin might not hold up throughout it. So I think for Geoff Neal, the key here is kind of very similar to Jared Cannonier. He needs to get in boxing range, he needs to force the issue, and he needs to put a pace on Carlos Prates. Like I said, in that Gary fight, it seemed as though Prates was mindful of his gas tank. Geoff Neal should look at that and look to force the issue. Let's test that gas tank out. Let's see what Prates is like after 14 minutes of grueling action, of high-paced action. If he stays on the outside and allows Prates to find his range, find his timing, and really dictate the tempo of this fight, I think it could be a really, really tough night for Geoff Neal. But on the other hand, if he forces the issue, if he implements his pace, his tempo to this fight, this could be a really exciting fight, and it could go all the way, For me, I lean Prates. I like Prates in this one. I like that left hand. I like the leg kicks of Prates, being able to slow Geoff Neal down, being able to sort of make him a standing target for Prates. And if someone's a standing target, Prates will not miss. This man is a sniper inside the cage, and I think he's going to find the chin of Neal, and I think he's going to put him out inside the distance. I'm going Prates by KO. And that brings us to the newly announced co-main of the evening. Now, this fight has garnered a lot of criticism on the likes of Twitter, which, anything gets criticized on there, but I love this fight. I think this fight is an absolute technical masterclass waiting to happen. It's the number 6th ranked Lerone Murphy taking on the UFC debutant Aaron Pico in the featherweight division. Now, Pico, of course, was supposed to fight this past weekend at UFC Abu Dhabi with Movsar Evloev. Evloev's out, gets moved, and Lerone Murphy steps in. For Pico, by the time this fight takes place, it will have been a 9-10 week camp. Is he going to be in the prime condition of his career, or is that camp maybe going to be a bit too long? We'll see. But for Murphy, he's taking a big risk with this one. Number 6th ranked, 8-fight win streak. He's 16-0-1 as a professional. He's never tasted defeat in his career. Really, Murphy should be looking for a fight up in the rankings. UFC's decided to overlook him. And so on 3 weeks' notice, he's decided to jump right in at the deep end and face off with a dangerous newcomer to the organization and the division in Aaron Pico. Pico, 13 wins, 9 by KO. People look at that and they often get confused that this man is a pure boxer and a poor striker. That's not the case. This guy is as good as it gets in the wrestling, and that's what makes Aaron Pico so dangerous. You worry about the wrestling, a big right hand will come over the top. If you worry about the hands too much and keep that guard too high, he'll shoot a double leg on you and drag you down to the canvas and maul you from there. It's such a difficult defensive matchup for anyone when it comes to Aaron Pico. He's got 2 big weapons, and it's difficult really choosing which one you're going to try and nullify. But if anyone can do that, it's going to be Lerone Murphy. This man is one of the most technical, just beautiful to watch in the defensive realm. I know that MMA is a sport that everyone wants to see offense and offense and offense. And, Lerone Murphy and his head coach over at Manchester Top Team, Carl Prince, have both mentioned that they need more offense from Lerone. And I completely understand that. But for me, as a fan of this sport, watching him go against Edson Barbosa, watching him go against Dan Ige, watching him go against Josh Emmett, and really nullify all 3 guys, apart from Ige landed a big right hand in the very first round, I think it's just beautiful to watch. The footwork of Murphy is something that every fighter should look to study. The way this man is able to stay away from those big right hands and completely nullify the offense of his opponent is just a beauty to watch. And to be honest, a lot of the hype is around Pico going into this fight. But for me, I think it's going to be another defensive masterclass from Murphy. I think he's going to be too technical. He's going to be too good. He's going to be too hard for Pico to track down. Now, if Pico can implement that wrestling, maybe drop the hands, I can absolutely see him landing something big and putting Murphy out. But for me, I think Murphy's just too good. So, it's one of those matchups where you look at it and it's sort of 51-49, but I'm going 51 to Murphy. I'm picking him, and I'm picking him by decision. And that brings us to the main event of the evening. One of the most anticipated matchups in all of mixed martial arts. This is a special fight that has been a long time coming. It's the champion, Dricus Du Plessis, defending his 185-pound crown against Borz, Khamzat Chimaev. I mean, it doesn't get better than this, ladies and gentlemen. These are 2 guys who are yet to taste defeat inside the UFC Octagon. Dricus Du Plessis, 9-0 inside the promotion. Khamzat Chimaev on the other side, carrying an 8-0 record. This is just a mouth-watering matchup. On the one side, you've got the technicality, the pressure, and the just mauling style of wrestling of Khamzat Chimaev. We saw him last time out go against Robert Whittaker in the toughest test of his career. At least it was supposed to be that, because he went out there and inside 1 round, he took Whittaker down. And yes, there were some injuries to the jaw, but leave that at the door. Khamzat went out there, took him down and crushed his face inside of 1 round, something that no one has ever come close to doing to Robert Whittaker. People don't just do that. Look at the RDR fight that we've just seen. It was a real challenge for RDR to take Whittaker down. He had to implement striking. He had to mix it up in order to get the Australian to the mat. Khamzat Chimaev just rushed at him, and he just took him straight down. You know, this guy is a maul. He's beaten the likes of Kamaru Usman, Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, and he's made it look easy, really, apart from Burns. Now, for Dricus Du Plessis, this is a man who's defended his belt multiple times. He's finished Israel Adesanya. He's finished Robert Whittaker. He's beaten Sean Strickland twice. He's on a roll, and for me, it's the confidence of Dricus Du Plessis that is his biggest weapon. This man believes that he's going to beat anyone who steps into that cage. You know, a lot of people feel as though Khamzat might run through him. Dricus Du Plessis will not see that as the case. He will see himself as the favourite, and he will truly believe, down to his deepest, darkest depths of his soul, he will believe that he's going to get the win here. And I think that's a real tool that he needs to harness and use in the fight. I think, of course, the biggest knock on Khamzat is the cardio. So for Dricus, put a pace on him early, put pressure on him, force him backwards, force him against the cage. You're going to have to defend some takedowns. You're probably going to end up with your back on the mat. But make Khamzat work down there. Don't make it easy for him. Don't just sit and accept position. You need to make Khamzat work. You need to wear on that gas tank of Khamzat. And if he can do all that, then he can absolutely come out and defend his belt. And if he does that, you know, this man, despite all the goofy technique, as people say, despite all the hilarious stuff that he does, falling face first into a takedown against Israel Adesanya, throwing jumping side kicks from nowhere, you know, being on bottom and just deciding, like Derek Lewis, I'm going to stand up now. You know, despite all that, this man is an elite mixed martial artist, make no mistake. Now, with that being said, I think Khamzat's just that little bit better. I think this man is just a force to behold, and I think he's going to go out there, he's going to take Du Plessis down, and I think he's going to get the win by submission. You know, if it goes past that third round, this matchup favours Du Plessis. But to me, I don't see it making there. Whatever the case, make sure you leave your comments and predictions down below. I'd love to know your thoughts, not only on the main card, but on the prelims as well, especially that main event of the evening as well. Leave your predictions, any shocks that you think might happen. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and make sure you subscribe to Calf Kick Sports. I've been Kian Lang, breaking down UFC 319, and I hope you enjoyed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.